There's no one that's alive on the earth today that can go without sleep. So we all need sleep. And oftentimes we underestimate the amount of sleep we need.
Well, one thing we know that's entirely underrated in today's world is a good night's sleep.
Some of these things like sleep or exercise or how much water you're drinking, they don't even come to mind. They feel too obvious, I think, to most people, where it's like it feels so obvious that it's actually not important.
I've practiced self-control, so I realize and I'm aware of what my body needs. Kids do not. They think it's the teacher, they think it's another student, but really it's your low frustration tolerance because of your lack of sleep.
I think that very few teenagers really even understand what adequate sleep is. When I tell them, we need to be shooting for 9 hours, they look at me like I'm crazy.
I don't know a lot of teenagers that are getting 9 to 10 hours of sleep.
I think that a huge percentage of teenagers are sleep deprived.
So sleep serves a function for us. It serves to restore our brain. It's part of our memory consolidation process, both for recall as well as learning new behaviors. When you've studied for 30 minutes and then you go to sleep later that evening and then you take a test next day, what the brain has done during that night is they've tried to put those words together and they've put those into your memory. You'll find that you perform better the next morning. And when we get insufficient sleep, it presents in different ways. In children, it often presents with increased irritability.
A decrease in problem solving, a decrease in decision-making skills, a decrease in control.
Contributes to fatigue. And when we're fatigued, we're not focused. And so if we're not focused, it can look a lot like a kid who is distractible in the classroom.
We know that children with sleep disorders are actually in the bottom quartile of their class as far as their ability to learn.
There's a lot of research on lack of sleep and symptoms of depression and anxiety, and we know that.
Sleep is where your brain goes to recuperate, and you're not getting enough of that. That's just going to continue to exacerbate.
So I see kids every day, including today, who come in and say, I think I have ADHD, I have problems staying on task, and I always ask, how's your sleep? How are your sleep habits? And
sometimes we think we're hungry when really all we need is a glass of water. Sometimes we think we're angry when really all we need is about 45 minutes of sleep.
They might not need a specialized treatment. They might just find that being in a habit of getting adequate rest is going to help them feel a lot better emotionally.
And we know that when quality and quantity of sleep are compromised for kids, it increases their risk of mental health challenges.
That sleep is just as important as a therapeutic or medicinal component. That sleep can help repair.
Sleep is one of those essential foundations that we just start with.
Because it sets the tone for the whole day.
Technology, in addition to just the natural tendency for teenagers to not want to go to bed, really has created a much bigger problem.
Kids, if you ask them, they'll honestly respond to you and say, I was on my phone. That's probably my only downtime, so it probably keeps them up at night.
Kids have phones younger and younger, and it's utilitarian, I get it. It has, it's important for families to be able to connect. It is the computer.
Many people, including young kids, sleep with their devices next to them. When alerts or notifications come up that can disturb their sleep, many of them stay up well past what would be a routine bedtime using their devices. We know that a third of adolescents say they stay up until midnight or later on weeknights, on school nights, using their devices. So impact is both on the quantity of sleep they have as well as on the quality of their sleep. Because again, if you're getting interrupted a lot, if you're waking up to drink a glass of water and then you happen to check your phone and go through your feed, it makes it harder to actually get back to sleep. You've disrupted your sleep.
Going to bed with this just onslaught of information, how do you ever sort it out enough so that your brain can rest?
Children could stay up reading books, right? I was that kid. And so it's like you read and your brain is kind of like slowing down as you're reading, whereas you're looking at the screen and the blue light's just like, awake, awake, awake.
That screen time impacts us and actually it promotes alertness. So that can delay bedtime for our kids, and yet we still have that expectation that they're going to get up in time for school.
Sometimes struggle to sleep because they're on TikTok, on social media.
How that impacts the way we think about ourselves may cause increased levels of stress about what other people are doing, the fear of missing out. Are there activities going on that I should be doing? Lack of sleep contributes to increased stress, anxiety, and increased stress and anxiety results in decreased sleep. So it becomes a very vicious cycle that can really impact things.
We all are looking for that thing that makes us feel good,
Video games have played a factor where they stay up and they're playing video games.
When that is right in front of us through a video game or some other technology, it's very alluring.
Creates confusion with children, and I think a lot of times children will choose the path of least resistance or the easier path.
The thing that I see happening is a lot of teenagers are napping after school for sometimes several hours. Then when it's time to go to bed, they're not tired. It's almost as if they have set the stage for gaming until 2, 3 in the morning because they're not tired yet, and they tell me that.
The other part is just responsibilities and just having to do a lot of things.
We also see schools and sports and other activities continue to expand the day, sometimes with preschool activities or after-school activities that extend the day, and yet those same kids are expected to get done with homework and studying and learning.
What is all of that if you haven't gotten enough sleep? Like, none of that is going to matter if your body can't figure out how to recuperate. You know, we're trying to jumpstart all, get to the gym and eat right and drink water and do all these things for our body, but we're not doing the one thing that we can really do for our brain, which is shut down and rest.
You know, I don't know if it's a shift particularly in sleep. I think that this lack of sleep is a symptom of what other areas of dysregulation that people have.
There are a lot of kids that I know that are going to bed without a parent at home. They're working these 14, 15-hour shifts and coming home and then having to engage kids on homework, bedtime. You know, they're not trying, you know, they're trying to get rest themselves. It's like parents don't have help, or a parent doesn't have help, and they're trying to get 4 or 5 kids to school on a daily basis.
If parents are stressed or parents don't have the routines in their own life of like, okay, now it's bedtime, now we're winding down, they're just like, whatever, at the end of the night.
In our community, sometimes we have kids who take care of siblings. Sometimes parents work 2 to 3 jobs, and it's really hard for the kid to focus on the things that they gotta do.
How do you figure it out if you haven't had good modeling? How do you figure it out if you have the weight of the world on your shoulders?
In the environment of increased levels of stress within family when it comes to housing, finances, kids are pretty perceptive about recognizing that and sensing that level of security, where is it safe to go to sleep at night.
Things like sleep, things like prioritizing your health go on the back burner. And so fight or flight continually, cortisol levels, all of those things that we know clinically, when we see it in practice, it's really hard.
In your mind's eye, kind of imagine how you behave on a daily basis. How do you feel on a daily basis, and what are the problems or threats, right, that exist in your environment that are affecting your ability to sleep well, to have a routine, to even feel as though you deserve stability and wellness.
We all have this thing called mental wellness. We all have to work on it. And it starts with a foundational piece of sleep.
I mean, being a parent is challenging, right? It's not for the faint of heart. And there's so many pieces that go into parenting, right? We're keeping them alive, right? Feeding, making sure they're getting sleep, taking care of their bodies, all of these things. But we have to remember that we also are responsible for helping them develop those skills to build strong emotional health and mental well-being, and, you know, maybe not separating physical and emotional health, but just how do we really build kids?
We have to be able to critically look at our own choices. And I say that because modeling is really important.
You know, indoctrinating our kids since they're little into this is how we do regulated sleep.
We've always had schedules for our kids, and they're in bed. And whether that meant we left an event or we left something early or we scheduled things around it so that we got home and we stuck to our schedule and we go to bed.
I always tell people that the awakening time is what really sets your bedtime, generally, if you're allowed to go to sleep when you're tired. So if we think that most kids need 9 to 9.5 hours of sleep, what does that look like? So if they're getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning, you go back, that means really they need to be in bed working on sleep before 10 p.m. 30 to 60 minutes before you go to bed, you need a little time to decompress.
The TV goes off, we brush teeth, we wind down. If that means we have to read a book to shut our mind down or listen to music or whatever we need to do to get into that calm place, that's part of our routine.
Not doing active things. If you're gaming right before you go to bed, again, the brain's very activated. So dimming those lights, getting away from the screens, and eliminate caffeine if you want to have some of that. Do that in the morning or early afternoon, and then just allowing your time to sleep.
Really is just a series of small habits that we put into place so that we're ready to go to sleep when our body needs to do that.
Even on weekends, I've been going to bed at midnight or later, and then Sunday night, it's 9 o'clock at night, I'm not really tired. I've been going to bed at midnight for the last 2 nights. They try to go to bed, they really don't feel tired, and yet the next morning, all of a sudden we're saying, hey, 7 o'clock, time to get back up. You can think of that in adults as jet lag. It takes us about 2 to 3 days to get back onto that rhythm. By the time they get into the rhythm, the weekend is there again. We've set ourselves up to struggle with that.
A lot of times kids with anxiety and depression have what we call restless sleep, right? They're sleeping, but when they wake up, they still feel fatigued. So the skill of some deep breathing exercises right before bed, yoga type activities right before bed, we usually give them one word to focus on, and they inhale what they want and they exhale what they don't want. The kids that put this practice into their sleep regimen have found going to sleep easier and more rewarding when they do sleep.
There are grounding techniques that you can do. Count the number of legs in the room that touch the floor. Just in your mind, close your eyes and think the bed has 4 legs, the dresser has 4 corners.
Setting that routine is really important, and that can carry forward into adolescence, right? And probably as they get to be adolescents, part of that routine might be, okay, now we take our phone out of our room, we're turning off tech for the night.
When a teenager who has, from age 7, not had technology in the home, they don't ask for it, they don't expect it, they don't pursue it because this is the way it is. So first things first is set those rules of the household early on and stick to them, because then we have less problems later. But if we have problems now, I strongly advise that we don't have technology in the bedrooms, that teenagers are charging their phones outside of their rooms at night.
At my house, we call the parking lot. And so the devices go in a parking lot, and the parking lot is in a common space, not in bedrooms.
Screens are hard. I mean, it's a hard thing. It's hard to take it out of the hand of a 15-year-old. And I'm not saying that there aren't times that I wake up in the morning and the screen is not in the den where it belongs, but certainly that's the expectation, and they know that that's the expectation, and that, typically there are some consequences if that doesn't get followed through with. So,
Talk about budgeting. We talk about they're paying for a roof over their head is the very first thing they pay for. When you budget your time, sleep is the very first thing that you should budget for.
I've even worked with kids where we set up a plan and say, hey, what are our goals for the week? By 7 o'clock, I'm off my phone. I'm not gonna check it until the next morning. My alarm doesn't ring or I just don't hear it, and I really wanna make it to school. So coming up with plans like whether, we include the family.
They might be going to bed at 1 o'clock, and they've been doing that for a long, long time. So for a teenager to go from 1 o'clock to 10 o'clock suddenly, I've learned that doesn't work. They go right back to 1 o'clock. What works better is to progressively move back while introducing those calm mind techniques. Then we can create that new habit progressively.
If you started, 3 months, you'll see that habit stick, that it becomes part of that lifestyle that you want.
Also have to be able to have the conversations with your kiddos that are tough. You can go, but we're gonna pick you up early. Or you can go, but you can only stay this late. And they're gonna throw a fit and they're gonna complain, but you're still the parent.
I think the best way to have the conversation, ask some open-ended questions.
What's our schedule looking like? What's going on?
And then listen, because they often are able to say what it is that they're needing, but then helping them frame that and then challenging them to say, okay, I heard you say that your quality of sleep isn't very good. How do you think you change that? And then listening again.
Not just saying, do it because I said so, and explain why you're doing something or not doing something and how it's important.
This is your shutdown time. This is a hard reset for your brain. And it might not feel like you need this right now, but you will need it, and you do need it.
I think a big thing is just having those conversations, finding that support person too, that person that is accountable, trusted adult, whether it's your teacher, mentor, teammates, having someone to keep you accountable when sometimes you may not have that person there and you just have to find that person.
It's not all of our children are in a safe place that they can sleep. And if that's the underlying challenge, it's a conversation that goes far beyond just, do I go to sleep? Do I have the right pillow? Is my temperature in my bedroom right? But oftentimes it's just starting with some very practical questions. What do you feel like quality sleep looks like? What would your room look like? What would it feel like? What are the temptations that keep you from sleeping?
And then perhaps also, if you're doing all of those things and you're saying, my child still seems tired, discussion with your pediatrician or your family practice physician to say, could there be something else going on? In general, I will say that snoring in children is considered abnormal. So then we start to say, is there another sleep disorder that may be contributing to sleep fragmentation? We've been looking for that special elixir that actually you can take this medication, it puts you right to sleep and you wake up the next day fully refreshed. Our first approach is typically not medications. We will approach this from a behavioral approach, trying to understand triggers, as we've mentioned. What are we doing in the evening? Are you taking medications? Are there other factors result in stimulation? All of those factors play a role, as well as the mental relaxation will develop that regular sleep cycle.
Maybe where we think we know so much that we forget that there's things that we're missing.
We might just need to see what might happen if we get into a regular routine of sleep. See if that improves your focus and attention. And if so, we've already corrected the problem at a foundational level. We don't need to go to these measures of evaluating for these other disorders if we can correct this problem and get more focus and attention just by getting adequate rest.
It's going to be an ongoing battle, but it's one that you should not give up. It's one that you should continue to fight.
And this is where we're at right now. And okay, we accept that, okay? But if you're here wanting this information, you're a good person who's trying to become your best person, right? And so that's where we start. But I think that's the message is, let's start.